the great individual saints that are brought forth during this period, who single-handedly gave us incredible teaching which is particularly geared towards spiritual life. As you have already experienced last time we spoke of Gregory Palamat. This week we bring forth another one, St. John of the Ladder, or John Climacus. Towards the end of the 19th century, in the secular world, there arose a phenomenon where various learned people were trying to develop ways by which they could accomplish certain tasks. And arose out of this concept of systemization, creating a system. Strange word maybe, but nothing special. And something that people have been doing in the past but never perhaps solely thought about it. So the way it's done is you start with indicating what sort of tasks you need to achieve your end, and you put them in order, and you start with the first one. Having finished that, you go to the second one, finish that, get a third one, and so forth until you've reached the end of what you wanted. By the time the 20th century was well on the way, the systemization was well advanced in many respects in almost all fields of sciences, engineering and arts and whatever. Then about mid-century, 20th century, certain lecturers in theological colleges thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if we could systemize spiritual life? Put it into this sort of system. So we start with something, and go on to the next one, next one, and next one. That didn't work, and there are reasons why it didn't work, and I'll tell you in a moment why. However, many hundreds of years before, St. John of the Ladder did something which you could say is the closest thing to systemization of spiritual life. The reason it doesn't work is because we are subject to the tyranny of the passions in both body, mind and soul, our fallen nature. And because everybody is different, we are swayed this way or that way in a way that is not necessarily logically following one from the other. St. John Climacus, a monk in the holy mountain of Sinai, was studying behavior of people. Psychology, you could say, modern system of psychology. And he studied it very carefully and himself, and started to write about how in spiritual life there is a connection from one thing to another in various ways. And this connection is extremely important for us to know, because sometimes we are subject to certain temptations, certain falls, certain tyrannies that bother us, and we think that by attacking that we might be able to bring that under control. And it doesn't happen because we miss the point. The point is this, that there are spiritual dispositions which occur, which give generation to the other ones that follow. For example, people who have problems with lust, for example, if they just attack it, chances are they're not going to get very far. However, if you read St. John the Ladder, how he goes about it, it starts basically with talkativeness, too much talkativeness, gossips, idle talk. First thing, idle talk then leads to familiarity, right? desires, lustful ones and others. So you've got at least 2 or 3 steps before you get to the one that is bothering you the most. So if you want to cut that, first thing to do is to hold your tongue. Get rid of idle talk, useless talk, gossip in particular, and judging, of course, because that will lead one thing to another to another. The other thing is that in his book, which we call The Ladder, and here is a copy of it, and I suggest that if you haven't got a copy, you sure all have it because it's desired reading during Great Lent, you get one, and you get only this particular publication, which is from Holy Transfiguration Monastery. It's the best translation we have in English by far. The reason that the systemization doesn't work in the way that the secular world wants it to work is because the very first ladder step, for example, is what? It's renunciation of the world. Renouncing that which might be attaching us in various ways to worldly passions, worldly desires, and all those things. Now, how many of us can honestly say that we can bypass that first step and grow on to the second one, and the third one, the fourth one? By the time you get to the one I just mentioned before, last, it's something like step 15 on the incorruptible purity and chastity to which the corruptible obtain by toil and sweat. Step 15. After step 1 we have detachment, etc., and it goes on and on in these sort of steps. Obviously the book is very detailed work of psychology, but not modern psychology, but divine psychology, the psychology which is the true one, which leads to Christ-likeness for those who follow it. The problem with modern psychology is that it assumes that many things which are very sinful are okay in our world. I'll give you another example. The holy man Paisius of Arizona, who reposed about 18 months ago or so. Ephraim, had many Greek people coming to him, especially for confession. And he noted that what was happening was the children of these Greek people were continually, on a great extent, falling into homosexuality more and more. And he examined this, and from texts like this by Saint Nicodemus, it's quite clear that those sorts of things have a few steps before, which are the parent's fault. And that parent fault is things that we could call sodomy, unnatural sexual acts of various types, even amongst married people. Lo and behold, a few months ago, had people come to me, confession. Okay, I always ask, well, when was the last time you were? Oh, long time, years ago. All right, what's happening? Oh, I've got such a problem. What's your problem? My son's become gay. All right, what can I do? I said, there's not much you can do except to pray and fast about it. That's about all you can do. And so this person goes on and confesses things, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, they are confessing sodomy. Just like that. Married person confessing these sort of things. And there it was again, proof of that which these Holy Fathers knew many centuries ago, even back in Old Testament times. And we have again the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah coming through, beginning with parents and being transmitted to their children on account of the spiritual degradation which occurs throughout the society. So what do you do about these sorts of things? Well, obviously people have to be aware that there is this connection between everything and nothing is standing by itself. Whatever you do, it's like throwing a rock into a pool and ripples go off. And those ripples, if they're bad, keep going and affect many things. Just as if something good is done, those ripples go off and affect good things. Saint Seraphim of Sarov said, "Save yourself and 1,000 around you will be saved." Likewise, damn yourself and most likely 1,000 around you will be damned because of the example you set to the lesser ones of spiritual knowledge. And therefore you have to be very careful. Just because you do things hidden, they aren't hidden because the Lord sees them, guardian angel sees them, demon sees them. And you open yourself up to transgressions and to others on account of that, because those ripples sort of interfere with the spiritual life of the world. There are these sort of mystical vibrations in the spiritual life that affect everybody. If you are sensitive, you can see that or feel that today in the world. So something so unnatural, this spiritual noise hits your soul when you step out into society. It's very, very unpleasant. The sights and the sounds and the just the attitudes of people and everything else that's happening, and particularly for those who we consider our leaders, not necessarily church leaders, but political ones and others. There is a terrible foreboding, same sort of foreboding that was indicated before World War I and World War II. There's the same sort of thing, but I think even worse. And these viral machinations which we face now is certainly an indication of that. So these sorts of things which affect us have been given to us through these holy fathers to cut these things out of our lives and to put them right. By themselves, that's why he is such a hero. By himself, he became a super divine psychologist and wrote for us and left us this great heritage on how to find out what things are happening with our souls and how we may control them. Given that we have certain things which are weaknesses in all of us, how do we find out what is actually causing this weakness? There is something usually before. People often confess lustful things as if it's the major one in their life. Yet, as I said, it's step 15. So there are a lot of things before that you need to look at. And things like gossip and idle talk, and obviously those sorts of things often lead to hatred as well, even murder. Go and sit somewhere in public and watch people, say, drinking coffee and communicating. They're all trying to outdo each other in speech. And there's always sort of one that is the chief one, they're the biggest gossiper there. And under their breath the others are saying, "Who's this guy think he knows everything, what a so-and-so and a so-and-so." It's leading already to hatred and derogatory because of that. Cut that useless talk, cut all those things, and your soul starts to get an ease, and also you are able to see much better all those things that were bothering you in your life. Because this is spiritual life. It's not, just saying, "Oh, yes, I believe, in the Trinity, and I believe in the dogmas." And this is the guts of it. This is where you are going to be harvesting your life on earth, how you went about it. And during the great judgment, that's going to be brought forth to you. What have you done? What have you achieved? God gave you life, gave you certain talents, gave you special ways. You're different to anybody else. What did you use that for? Did you bury it, like a talent? Or did you use it to improve your soul, and perhaps help others as well? That's what we have to answer for. And spiritual life is all about that. That's why during this Lenten period we have brought the saints like this, because as we understand that we are striving to return to the state of Adam before the fall. It's the whole idea of Lent. And just before some of you came, we read the troparions for the Feast of the Annunciation, which we are in the after feast now. And there it is, quite clear. God became a man so that Adam, that is mankind, could become God. So it's simple. People don't seem to realise that. So many Christians in the world, they don't seem to realise that. They sort of think that he came and he gave us a few things and that's all we have to do. No. It goes on. It's much deeper and much greater than that. And only in Orthodoxy will you find those sorts of teachings. You will not find that anywhere else. In any of the other ones that consider themselves to be Christian, you tell them that God became a man so that men can become gods. They say, what are you talking about? What sort of rubbish is this? Well, he became a man because of his great love for the pinnacle of his creation, mankind. And what a mess we've made out of that pinnacle. What a mess we've made by giving ourselves over to the passions and to the tyrannies and whatever. And in this already the 20th century, we know better than in the past, and even worse when you think about it. The crimes of the 20th century, for example, have been horrendous. In no time in history have such things occurred. Therefore, be aware. Next week we have another great saint, this time a female, Mary of Egypt, who also gave us great leadings into the spiritual life from a different angle. And again, that sort of completes this cycle of understanding the gifts of the Holy Spirit that we spoke about through St. Gregory Palomar, the details of spiritual life that we have from John of the Ladder, and then the sort of ascetic life and all those things that are necessary to indeed become truly of the state of Adam before the fall, which we will talk about next week, God willing, through Mary of Egypt. God help us in this struggle, because I know it's not easy, but it's an essential part. And like I said to you last week, the important thing is not to give up. Don't give up. You may not make it, but don't give up. Not giving up is accounted to you in a positive sense. Amen. Let us say